Part 1. The great hall of the Galactic Concord shimmered under the soft blue light of Varelli's Prime's twin suns. Tall curved walls pulsed gently with living crystal, responding to the mood of the room. Hundreds of delegates from over 200 species sat in tiered circles, their forms as varied as the stars they came from, some scaled, some feathered, some wrapped in shimmering energy fields. At the very center, on a simple platform of polished stone, sat the human delegation. Chris Langley adjusted his collar, not out of nervousness, but habit. He was tall, with tired eyes and a calm voice that had carried Earth through 3 near wars. Beside him, Maya Ruiz tapped quietly on a flat datapad, her dark hair pulled back, her expression unreadable. She wasn't a diplomat by trade, she was an astrophysicist. But after the Krell swarm had been stopped by a human-designed quantum phase pulse that no other species could replicate, the Concord insisted Earth send more than just politicians. They wanted to see the minds behind humanity's sudden rise. The Krell had been a nightmare, self-replicating war machines that consumed entire systems, turning planets into scrap. Dozens of Concord fleets had failed to slow them. Then out of nowhere, Earth's third fleet engaged them near the Helios Rift. In less than 6 hours, the Krell armada collapsed, their core networks fried by a weapon no one understood. The victory shocked the galaxy. Within a year, humanity was invited to join the Concord as a full member. Many species grumbled. Humans were young, loud, and unpredictable, but they could not be ignored. Now 3 months into the summit, tensions had reached a breaking point. High Counselor Zelkor of the Thalari rose from his elevated seat. His long silver limbs moved with practiced grace, his voice echoing through the chamber via translation fields. The Concord recognizes humanity's contribution against the Krell swarm, he began, his tone measured but firm. However, your continued development of quantum phase weaponry violates Article 9 of the Stability Accords. Such weapons destabilize subspace coherence across sectors. They are not defensive, they are tools of dominance. A murmur rippled through the chamber. Several reptilian delegates from the Zenthar Collective hissed in agreement. Others watched silently, curious how the humans would respond. Chris stood slowly. He did not raise his voice. Counselor, the Krell weren't stopped by diplomacy. They weren't stopped by sanctions or treaties. They were stopped because Earth built something new, something that worked. We didn't ask for this war. We didn't ask to be dragged into your politics. But when the galaxy needed help, we answered. Zelkor tilted his head slightly, a Thalari gesture of polite disagreement. And for that you are thanked. But gratitude does not grant exception. All members must abide by the same rules. You must decommission your phase weapons and submit your research to Concord oversight. Maya finally looked up from her pad. You want us to hand over technology that took us 50 years to develop? Technology that saved your outer colonies, so you can lock it away in a vault? That's not oversight. That's fear. Gasps filled the room. Speaking so bluntly was considered deeply rude in Concord protocol, but Maya didn't care. She had spent weeks listening to species that once called humans primitive, now demand control over the very tools that protected them. Chris placed a hand lightly on her shoulder, then turned back to Zelkor. We came here in good faith. We offered partnership, not submission. If the price of your alliance is that we give up our right to defend ourselves, or worse, that we stop thinking, stop creating, then we have nothing more to discuss. He paused. The chamber fell utterly silent. Even the crystal walls seemed to dim. Humanity does not seek to rule, Chris said, his voice steady. But we will not be ruled either. Then, without another word, he gathered his notes. Maya stood, tucked her datapad under her arm, and followed. The rest of the human team, engineers, scientists, 2 quiet security officers, rose as one and walked out of the great hall. No one moved to stop them. Outside, the air was warm and smelled faintly of blooming sky vines. A human shuttle waited on the landing pad, engines humming softly. As they boarded, Chris glanced back once at the towering spire of the Concord Hall. It looked ancient, unshakable, like it had stood for 10,000 years and would stand for 10,000 more. But Chris knew better. Nothing lasted forever. Not empires, not alliances, not even fear. Back on Earth, news of the walkout spread faster than light. Some called it reckless, others called it brave. Most just watched and waited. Within 24 hours, Earth's government issued a formal statement. All diplomatic ties with the Galactic Concord were suspended indefinitely. Trade routes closed. Communication channels went dark. Human ships recalled from deep space. Even the cultural exchange programs, music, art, educational streams that had quietly charmed alien audiences were shut down. The galaxy noticed immediately. On the mining moon of Kethra 7, medkits designed by human bioengineers ran out. Without them, a fungal plague began spreading among the native gruel workers. On the Thalari homeworld, fusion reactors started flickering. Human-made stabilizers were failing without routine updates. Entertainment hubs across dozens of systems went silent as Earth's drama series, music, and even cooking shows vanished from the networks. People didn't realize how much they'd grown to rely on human culture until it was gone. But Earth didn't look back. On Mars, engineers worked double shifts in underground labs, refining shield harmonics. In orbit around Luna, Captain Derek Boone ran drills with the newly formed Sol Defense Fleet. And in a quiet research dome near the equator, Maya Ruiz began sketching equations no one else in the galaxy could understand, equations that might one day bend time itself. Chris, meanwhile, sat alone in his office in Geneva, staring at a star map. He knew the conquered would not beg, not yet. Pride ran deep in ancient civilizations. But pride, he thought, was a luxury only the safe could afford. And right now no one in the galaxy was truly safe. The humans had left the talks, but they hadn't left the fight. They had simply decided to fight on their own terms. And somewhere far beyond the edge of known space, something worse than the Krell was stirring. The galaxy would soon learn that walking away from humanity was the easiest mistake, and the most dangerous. Part 2. Weeks passed after the humans walked out of the Galactic Concord summit. At first, most species thought it was a bluff. Humans were known for their dramatic gestures, their art, their speeches, their sudden bursts of emotion. Surely they would return within days, humbled, ready to negotiate. But days turned into weeks, and still, Earth remained silent. The silence was louder than any explosion. On the Thalari homeworld, High Counselor Zelkor watched his people grow uneasy. The fusion reactors in 3 major cities began to sputter. Human-made stabilizers, once dismissed as clever but unnecessary, were now the only things keeping power grids from collapsing. Engineers scrambled to reverse engineer them, but human tech was built on chaotic logic, intuitive leaps, not linear steps. Without the regular data pulses from Earth, the systems degraded faster than anyone predicted. On the Zenthar mining colonies, the fungal plague worsened. Native healers tried their traditional remedies, but the spores mutated too quickly. Human medkits had contained adaptive nanites that learned and adjusted in real time. Now, with no resupply, the death toll climbed. Parents whispered to their children that the humans had cursed them. Elders shook their heads and said, "We should not have pushed them away." Even the entertainment streams mattered more than anyone admitted. Across the galaxy, people had grown used to Earth's stories. Tales of ordinary people facing impossible odds, of love found in war zones, of scientists laughing while saving the world. Alien audiences didn't always understand the jokes, but they felt the heart. Now their screens showed only recycled Concord propaganda or dull historical reenactments. Morale dipped. Productivity dropped. For the first time in centuries, the galaxy felt bored and lonely. Back on Earth, life went on, but not as before. Chris Langley no longer wore suits. He wore simple gray uniforms, the kind worn by planetary defense coordinators. He spent his days in underground command centers beneath the Rocky Mountains, reviewing sensor logs from the outer rim. Earth's borders were quiet, but quiet didn't mean safe. He knew the Conquered was watching. He also knew they were hoping for a mistake, a sign that humanity was struggling without galactic trade. They were wrong. Humanity had never truly depended on the Conquered. Trade had been minimal, mostly raw minerals exchanged for human-designed software and medical tech. Earth grew its own food in vertical farms, powered its cities with clean fusion, built its ships in lunar dry docks using recycled asteroid metal. The walkout hadn't hurt Earth. It had freed it. Maya Ruiz worked from a research station on the far side of the moon. Her team, small but brilliant, focused on something the Conquered had laughed at during the summit: temporal shielding. Most species believed time was fixed, unchangeable. But Maya had seen anomalies during the Krell War, microsecond distortions near quantum phase detonations. She believed time could be bent just slightly to create a shield that made a ship appear out of sync with reality. Not invisible, just missed. Derek Boone, captain of the UNS Resolute, trained his crew in deep space drills. No flashy maneuvers, no grand speeches, just precision, discipline, and trust. His ship was one of 12 new Sol-class vessels, each built with silent drives and layered armor. They carried no Concord standard weapons. Instead, they used rail accelerators and smart missiles guided by human neural nets, systems too fast for alien AIs to predict. The galaxy assumed humanity was sulking. In truth, humanity was preparing. Meanwhile, whispers spread through Concord channels. A smuggler from the Rim claimed he'd seen human freighters near the Oort cloud, loading strange cargo. A scout drone from the Varelli system picked up encrypted signals bouncing between Mars and Titan. No one could decode them, but the pattern was unlike anything in the Concord database. Zelkor called emergency sessions. Some counselors demanded sanctions. Others argued for sending a peace envoy, but protocol forbade it. The Concord did not chase members who left. To do so would be to admit weakness. Still, Zelkor couldn't shake the feeling that they had made a terrible error. One evening, he sat alone in his private chamber, watching an old Earth film that had been copied before the blackout. It was a simple story, a teacher helping children in a broken city learn to read. There were no space battles, no aliens, no grand speeches, just kindness, just hope. He watched it 3 times. On Earth, children played in parks under open skies. Farmers harvested crops under artificial suns in domed cities. Artists painted murals on the sides of old buildings, not for fame, but because they wanted to. Humanity wasn't building an empire. It was building a home. And that, Zelkor realized too late, was the difference. The Concord saw strength in control, in order, in rules that lasted millennia. Humanity saw strength in change, in risk, in the messy, beautiful act of trying something new, even if it failed. Without humans, the galaxy didn't just lose a weapon or a medicine. It lost a way of thinking, a spark. Back on the moon, Maya made a breakthrough. Her temporal shield prototype held for 0.8 seconds during a test. It wasn't much, but it was enough. Enough to dodge a laser, enough to survive a collision, enough to buy time. She sent the data to Chris. He read it, then looked out the window at the stars. He didn't smile, but his shoulders relaxed just a little. Earth was not waiting for the galaxy to come back. Earth was moving forward. And the galaxy, for the first time in its long history, felt left behind. No one knew it yet, but something was coming from beyond the Andromeda Rift. Something hungry. Something that didn't care about treaties or pride or ancient laws. When it arrived, the Concord would be unready. But humanity was already building the shield. Part 3. The first sign came from the edge of known space, a distress call from the outer mining colony of Vexus 9. It lasted only 3 seconds before cutting out. The message was garbled, but one word came through clearly: stars, then silence. The Concord dismissed it at first. Vexus 9 was small, remote, prone to comms failures. But when 3 more colonies along the Andromeda Rift went dark within a week, panic began to spread. Patrol ships were sent. None returned. High Counselor Zelkor stood in the war room of the conquered capital, staring at a star map that now showed 5 black holes, where once there had been thriving outposts. His hands trembled slightly, a rare sign of fear for a Thalari. What could do this? He asked. No one answered. Then the 6th system fell. This time a scout drone captured footage before it was destroyed. The recording showed a sky filled with dark, twisting shapes, vast living ships that moved like schools of fish, surrounding a star. As the drone watched, the star dimmed, then collapsed inward, not in a supernova, but as if being drained. The planets cracked apart, pulled into the void like dust into a vacuum. The Vorthax had arrived. No one knew where they came from. Their ships were part organic, part machine, grown rather than built. They did not speak. They did not negotiate. They consumed. Stars, planets, comets, everything was fuel for their endless hunger. Within days, they wiped out the Kethari defense line, a fleet of 80 Concord warships without losing a single vessel. Zelkor called an emergency session. Delegates shouted over each other, some demanding total evacuation of the outer sectors, others pushing for a full-scale counterattack. But the conquered fleet was scattered, its ships outdated, its tactics predictable. The Vorthax moved in perfect sync, as if guided by a single mind. "We need new strategies," said a Xanthar general, his scales dull with exhaustion. "Old ways will not work." And then quietly someone said what everyone was thinking. "We need the humans." Zelkor closed his eyes. Pride warred with survival. The conquered had cast humanity out. Now facing extinction, they wanted them back. It was humiliating, but necessary. He authorized a secret channel, one that had not been used since Earth cut ties. It was an old trade frequency, buried deep in the network, known only to a few. He sent a single message, unencrypted, so there could be no mistake. "We were wrong. We need you." The message traveled through dead space, past silent human listening posts, past automated defense drones that did not respond. It reached Earth's outer comms net and was logged, analyzed, and forwarded, not to the government, but to Chris Langley's private terminal. Chris read it once, then again. He did not reply, but he did not delete it either. On the moon, Maya Ruiz had already seen the Vorthax data. She had accessed the Concorde's public emergency broadcast, what little remained before the networks collapsed. She studied the drone footage frame by frame. The way the Vorthax ships moved, it wasn't random. It was rhythmic, like a heartbeat, like a song. She ran simulations through her quantum models. Human computers didn't just calculate, they guessed, tested, failed, and tried again in ways alien logic could not follow. After 72 hours without sleep, she found it. A pattern in the Vorthax movements. They relied on quantum resonance to stay synchronized. Every ship pulsed at the same frequency, tied to a central hive mind node. If that resonance could be disrupted, even for a second, their unity would shatter. She called Chris. "I know how to stop them," she said. He didn't ask how. He just said, "Build it." In hidden shipyards near Jupiter, engineers worked around the clock. Using parts from decommissioned satellites and spare fusion cores, they assembled a device unlike anything the galaxy had seen. It wasn't a weapon. It was a pulse emitter tuned to emit chaotic quantum noise, random, messy human noise. Maya called it the static heart. Meanwhile, Derek Boone received new orders. The UNS Resolute was to stand by, fully fueled, weapons hot, ready to jump at a moment's notice. His crew asked no questions. They trusted their captain. They trusted Earth. Back on Varelli's Prime, the Concorde prepared for the worst. The Vorthax were now only 3 systems from the capital. Evacuation ships filled the skies. Families clung to each other, whispering prayers to gods long forgotten. Zelkor stood on a balcony watching the chaos below. He thought of the human garden Chris had once described in a diplomatic meeting. A place where people grew flowers not for profit, but for beauty. He wondered if Earth still had gardens. He wondered if Earth would answer. Days passed. No reply came from Sol system. Hope faded. Then, without warning, a single human ship dropped out of warp near the Concorde's last defensive line. It was small, sleek, unarmed. The UNS Resolute, all conquered ships froze. Weapons powered down. No one fired. No one dared. A voice came over open channel. Calm, clear, human. "This is Captain Derek Boone of Earth. We are not here to fight. We are here to help." Zelkor nearly fell to his knees in relief. Boone transmitted coordinates and activation codes for the static heart. The device was already aboard his ship, ready to deploy. He explained how it worked in simple terms. "It won't destroy them. It will confuse them. Just long enough for you to strike." The Concorde scientists were skeptical. The idea of using chaos as a weapon made no sense in their ordered universe. But they had no other options. As the Vorthax armada approached, a wall of darkness blotting out the stars, the Resolute moved into position. Boone gave the order. The static heart pulsed once, a burst of raw, unpredictable energy that rippled through subspace. For a fraction of a second, the Vorthax ships stuttered. Their perfect formation broke. One veered into another. A third fired on its own kind. The hive mind screamed in silent disarray. The conquered fleet, stunned but ready, surged forward, but the Resolute did not stay to watch. As the battle began, it turned and vanished into warp, leaving behind only a final message. We don't need your seat at the table. We built our own. Zelkor heard those words and finally understood. Humanity had never wanted power. They had only wanted respect and the right to be themselves. Now, as the first real victory against the Vorthax unfolded, the galaxy realized something deeper. They hadn't just needed human weapons. They had needed human thinking, the kind that thrived in uncertainty, that turned noise into strategy, that saw hope in the middle of chaos, and that more than any shield or ship was what would save them. Part 4. The battle raged for 6 hours near the dying star of Corellis. Concord ships, once sluggish and predictable, now moved with desperate energy. They fired not in neat formations, but in wild, shifting patterns, mimicking the chaos the human pulse had shown them. It worked. The Vorthax, confused and disconnected, lashed out blindly. Their hive mind struggled to resynchronize, but every time it pulsed back into rhythm, a stray shot or a sudden maneuver from a conquered pilot would break it again, by dawn on Corellis. Prime, if such a thing could be called dawn with. The sky burning red from plasma fire, the Vorthax armada was in retreat. Not destroyed, but scattered, wounded. For the first time since their arrival, they had been pushed back. Cheers erupted across the Concord fleet. Ships flashed victory signals. Pilots wept in their cockpits. But High Counselor Zelkor felt no joy. He stood alone in the command center, watching the sensor screen where the UNS Resolute had vanished. The humans had come, saved them, and left without asking for thanks, without demanding anything in return. That silence spoke louder than any demand ever could. Back on Earth, there was no celebration either. Chris Langley received the battle report from Derek Boone with a quiet nod. Maya Ruiz studied the resonance data from the static heart's pulse, already sketching improvements. The device had worked, but only barely. The next time, the Vorthax would adapt. Humanity had bought time, not victory. In the weeks that followed, the Concord tried to contact Earth again. Official channels remained dead. Unofficial ones, smugglers, old traders, even a desperate message sent via a child's toy drone launched from a border moon, were all ignored. Earth was not angry. It was simply gone, as if it had never been part of the galaxy at all. But the galaxy could not forget. On a dozen worlds, children drew pictures of the human ship that came from nowhere. Songs were written about the silent saviors. Even the Zenthar, once the loudest critics of human unpredictability, began teaching their young to embrace controlled chaos in problem-solving. Old ways were questioned. New ideas bloomed. Zelkor knew this change was fragile. Without a real connection to humanity, it would fade. He made a decision no Thalari leader had made in 5,000 years. He would go to Earth himself. Not as a counselor. Not as a representative of the conquered. Just as one being seeking another. He traveled in a small, unarmed vessel painted white, the color of peace in human history, he had learned. He brought no guards, no entourage. Only a single data crystal containing the full Conquered archives on the Vorthax as a gift. And a small potted plant from his home garden, its silver leaves trembling in the ship's gentle light. When his ship entered the Sol system, he expected to be challenged. Instead, a human patrol cruiser hailed him politely. "State your business," the voice said, calm and clear. "I wish to speak with Chris Langley," Zelkor replied. There was a long pause. Then, "Hold position." Hours passed. Zelkor waited, heart slow but steady. Finally, a shuttle approached. It docked without ceremony. 2 humans boarded his ship, Chris Langley and Maya Ruiz. They wore simple clothes, no uniforms, no badges of rank. Zelkor bowed deeply, a gesture of great humility among his people. "Thank you for seeing me," Chris nodded. "We saw your ship. We saw you came alone. That means something." They spoke in the small cabin of Zelkor's vessel. No translators were needed. The humans had perfected real-time language tech long ago, but chose to use it sparingly, preferring to listen more than to speak. Zelkor explained the battle, the retreat of the Vorthax, the changes sweeping the conquered. He admitted their fear, their pride, their mistake. "We thought order was strength," he said. "You showed us that life is not orderly. It is messy, and that is where true strength lies." Maya listened quietly, then asked, "Do you understand why we left?" "Yes," Zelkor said. "You did not leave because you were angry. You left because you were tired of being asked to be less than you are. Chris smiled faintly. Exactly. Zelkor offered the data crystal. Everything we know about the Vorthax. It is yours, Maya took it. We'll study it. But remember, our help is not a return to the conquered. We are not coming back to your table. I know, Zelkor said. But perhaps you could let others visit yours? Chris looked out the viewport at the blue-green curve of Earth below. Clouds drifted over continents. Oceans shimmered. It looked peaceful, fragile, but he knew better. Earth had survived ice ages, wars, plagues, and now the judgment of the stars. It was not fragile. It was resilient. We'll think about it, he said. As Zelkor prepared to leave, Maya handed him something small, a seed pod wrapped in cloth. Plant this where you live, she said. It's a sunflower. It grows fast. It always turns toward the light. Zelkor held it like a sacred relic. Back on his homeworld, he planted the seed in his garden. Within weeks, a bright yellow flower rose toward the twin suns. The Lari scientists studied it, amazed at how it bent and twisted to catch every ray. They called it the human flower. Meanwhile, on Mars, engineers began building a second static heart, this one stronger, smarter. On Luna, Derek Boone trained new pilots, not just in combat, but in decision-making under uncertainty. In Geneva, Chris met with leaders from every nation on Earth. They agreed on one thing: humanity would not rule the galaxy, but it would protect its own way of life, and if others chose to stand with them, not above them, then maybe, just maybe, they could share the stars. The Vorthax were still out there, healing, learning, planning, but now, for the first time, they faced not just a galaxy of rules and ranks, but a galaxy touched by human spirit, unpredictable, stubborn, and full of hope. And that, more than any weapon, was what frightened the darkness. Part 5. The sunflower bloomed on Zelkor's balcony, its golden face turned toward the morning light. Around it, the city of Thalera hummed with a new kind of energy. Markets buzzed not just with trade but with ideas. Schools taught children to ask what if instead of what is. Even the old war colleges began running simulations based on human tactics, messy, bold, full of risk. The galaxy had not just been saved from the Vorthax, it had been changed by humanity. Even though humanity remained distant, Zelkor knew this change would not last unless it was nurtured. He called a special session of the Conquered Council, not in the Great Hall but in a simple garden beneath open sky, a human custom he had come to admire. He stood before the gathered leaders not in his formal robes but in plain gray cloth, the color of Earth's mountains. The Vorthax will return, he said. They are wounded, not gone, and next time they will be ready for our chaos. He paused, letting the truth settle. We cannot face them alone. We need Earth, not as a member, not as a servant, but as a partner. Murmurs rose. Some agreed. Others feared losing control. But no one denied the truth anymore. Zelkor then made an offer no one expected. He proposed dissolving the old Concord structure, the rigid hierarchy, the endless rules, the council that spoke for all but listened to none. In its place, he suggested a new alliance, one built on choice, not command. Each species would keep its freedom. Help would be given, not demanded. And Earth would be invited, not to join but to lead if they wished. The vote was close, but it passed. A message was sent to Sol System. Not a plea, not a demand, just an open hand. This time, Earth replied, not with a ship, not with a weapon, but with a simple transmission, coordinates and a time. Zelkor went alone again. He arrived at the edge of the asteroid belt, where a small station floated in silent orbit. It was not a military base. It was a meeting place, built by human hands open to all. Inside, there were no thrones, no banners, no signs of rank. Just tables, chairs, and large windows showing the spinning Earth below. Chris Langley waited for him there, along with Maya Ruiz and Derek Boone. No guards. No speeches. Just 3 humans and 1 Thalari sitting in a circle. We saw your proposal, Chris said. We won't lead your alliance. We never wanted that. Zelkor nodded. He had expected this. But, Chris continued, we'll stand beside you. Not under your rules. Not above them, just beside, Maya added. We'll share what we learn. We'll fight when needed. But we decide how, when, and why. No more orders. No more demands. That is fair, Zelkor said. They talked for hours. About the Vorthax. about rebuilding, about teaching young minds to think, not just obey. By the end, they had no treaty signed in blood or light, just an understanding, spoken plainly and held in silence. As Zelkor prepared to leave, Chris walked with him to the airlock. Outside, the stars were bright. "You know," Chris said, "we never wanted to be special. We just wanted to be ourselves. And that," Zelkor replied, "is what makes you special." Back on Earth, life continued. Children played in parks. Farmers harvested crops. Artists painted on old walls. But now something new had begun. Small alien ships, Thalari, Zenthar, even a few from species Earth had never met, visited the outer stations. Not to trade, not to spy, just to learn. They watched how humans argued, then laughed. How they failed, then tried again. How they built not just machines, but meaning. The Vorthax did return. 6 months later, they struck the outer rim again, stronger, smarter. But this time the galaxy was ready. Human-designed disruptors pulsed from conquered ships. Pilots used chaotic flight paths learned from Earth simulators. When the hive mind tried to sink, it found only noise. Beautiful, unpredictable human noise. The battle was hard. Many died, but the Vorthax were pushed back again. And this time they did not return. Years passed. The new alliance grew, not through conquest, but through trust. Earth remained independent, but never alone. Human stories, music, and science spread across the stars not as exports, but as gifts. And in return, humanity learned from others. New medicines, new ways to see the universe, new friends. Zelkor visited Earth one last time, old and slow, his silver limbs bent with age. He walked with Chris through a garden near the Pacific, where sunflowers grew tall and bright. Children ran past them, human and Thalari, laughing in a mix of languages. "They don't see the difference," Zelkor said softly. "No," Chris replied. "They never did. When Zelkor died, Earth sent a single ship to his funeral. A quiet gesture, no fanfare. But on every world in the Alliance, a sunflower was planted that day. Humanity had left the talks once, and the galaxy had pleaded. But in the end, it was not pleading that brought them back. It was respect. It was the simple act of seeing humans not as tools or threats, but as people, flawed, fierce, and free. And in that seeing, the galaxy found not just salvation, but something far rarer, hope that was truly shared.